The diner was nearly empty when the man in the leather jacket walked in. He looked like an ordinary traveler tired from the road, but the hostess didn't know his face was worth millions. His name was Ethan Cole, owner of a chain of luxury hotels, who'd decided to visit one of his struggling branches in disguise. He sat at a corner booth, ordered a steak, and kept quiet, wanting to see how his staff treated an average customer. Maya, the waitress on duty, was working a double shift. Her apron was wrinkled, her eyes heavy, but her smile stayed kind. She brought him water before he asked and said softly, "Your food will take a few minutes, sir." He nodded, barely looking up, but he noticed how she checked on an old couple nearby, refilled their coffee and helped a child clean up a spilled drink without a hint of irritation. When his meal arrived, it wasn't perfect. The steak was slightly overcooked, yet she apologized sincerely, as if she'd failed him personally, halfway through his meal. Ethan noticed her slipping a folded napkin into his check holder. He frowned, curiosity winning over caution. When she left the table, he opened it, expecting maybe a phone number. Instead, inside were 6 words, written in rushed handwriting. "Please, don't fire the kitchen staff." His heart stopped for a moment. He looked around the room more carefully now, seeing the chipped counters, the broken lights, and the nervous cook watching from the back. When Maya returned, he asked quietly, "Why would you write this?" She hesitated, then said, "Because I heard the new owner was visiting today, and the kitchen's been struggling. They're scared they'll lose their jobs. They work hard. Sir, harder than anyone I've ever met." Her voice cracked slightly, but she didn't look away. Ethan stared at her for a long time, realizing this wasn't a waitress begging for herself. She was standing up for everyone else in the room. He folded the note and slipped it into his jacket pocket, saying softly, "Thank you, Maya, you just changed how this visit ends." Ethan couldn't shake Maya's words from his mind. He had visited hundreds of restaurants before, but no one had ever written him a note like that. That night he sat in his hotel room, staring at the napkin she had given him. He thought about the way she stood up for others without expecting anything in return. Something about it hit him deeper than he expected. The next morning he returned to the diner again in disguise and sat at the same booth. Maya looked surprised but smiled the same kind, honest smile as before. When she came over, he asked quietly, "How long have you been working here?" She said, "Almost 6 years, sir, since my husband passed. I needed a job that let me be home for my daughter." In the afternoons, he asked, "Does the manager know how much you do for this place?" Maya gave a small laugh. "No one really notices. I'm just trying to keep things going for everyone else." Ethan finished his coffee and said, "I'd like to speak to your manager, please." She looked nervous, thinking she was in trouble, but when the man arrived, Ethan removed his cap, revealing his face. The manager's jaw dropped. "Sir, I didn't know you were coming." Ethan looked at him and said, "Then maybe you should have your closing this place tomorrow for renovations. Maya, you'll still be paid, and when we reopen, you'll be running the floor as our new supervisor." The manager stared in shock while Maya's eyes filled with tears. She said, "I don't know what to say." Ethan smiled softly. "You already said it yesterday when you stood up for your team. That's the kind of person I want leading my business." Weeks later, when the diner reopened, the entire staff returned working with pride under Maya's guidance. Above the counter hung a framed napkin with faded ink that read, "Please don't fire the kitchen staff," and beneath it a plaque engraved with one line, "Kindness built this place, not money." Months passed, and the diner that once struggled became the busiest stop in town. People came not just for food, but for the warmth Maya created. The staff who once worked in fear now laughed during shifts, and customers noticed the difference. Ethan visited often, though he never arrived in suits. Anymore, he came in simple clothes, sat quietly at the corner booth and watched how Maya led with the same heart she had shown the first day he met her. One afternoon, he called her into his office at headquarters. Maya looked nervous, thinking something was wrong. But Ethan smiled and said, "I didn't bring you here to talk about the diner. I brought you here because I'm opening 10 new branches and I want you to train the managers." She stared at him, speechless. "Me, sir? I'm not qualified for that." Ethan shook his head. "You're the most qualified person I know. You taught me what leadership actually means. It's not authority, it's empathy." Tears filled her eyes as she said softly, I was just trying to protect my co-workers. Ethan smiled. That's exactly why you deserve this promotion. He handed her an envelope. Inside was a contract with her name written under the title Regional Operations Director. She covered her mouth, unable to speak. Ethan said, "This company doesn't need perfect people. It needs good ones. You reminded me that kindness feeds loyalty better than rules ever could." Years later, every branch of the chain carried a small framed napkin on the wall, a symbol of where it all began. Whenever Ethan gave speeches, he told her, story calling it the day his business found its soul. And every morning before opening her newest diner, Maya would place a fresh napkin by the register and write one simple line: "The best ideas begin with compassion." Years later, the story of the E. Waitress and the Undercover Millionaire became a quiet legend among employees. Every new hire learned about Maya, the woman who once wrote a note that saved a team and changed an empire. She never liked the spotlight, but her name had become a symbol of kindness printed in the company's values under one line, written in her own words. People matter more than profit. Ethan eventually made her his business partner, though she still preferred to work on the ground, helping staff solve problems rather than sitting in meetings. She often said walls don't build companies, people do. One evening after closing time, Ethan found her cleaning tables in the original diner, the same one where everything started. He laughed softly. "You're still wiping tables when you could be running a corporation." She smiled. "I am running one. I'm just doing it where it all began." They sat by the window as the city lights reflected off the glass. Ethan said, "I came here once thinking I'd teach my staff discipline, and you taught me humanity." Maya looked at him with gentle eyes and said, "I didn't teach you anything. You just remembered who you were supposed to be." He nodded quietly, realizing how far they'd both come from that single napkin message. The next morning, the diner opened to another busy day. A young waitress dropped a tray and started to cry, thinking she'd be fired. Maya walked over, helped her pick it up, and said, "Mistakes don't end jobs. They teach strength." Ethan watched from the counter, smiling at the living proof of the company's heart. The framed napkin still hung above the register, now aged and yellowed but still readable. "Please don't fire the kitchen staff."